Some women are simply born rich, confident, and naturally magnetic to their desires. Let's be clear, this podcast is not for them. However, if you're a soul-driven, visionary, or entrepreneurial woman who's been on a mission to learn how to create a better future bursting to come out of you, welcome to my world. I'm Jo Warwick, and this is Rich, Sexy, and Free. I've dedicated most of my career to helping women get to their core power and unlock the missing pieces for their own unique success. You may already know me as the author of The Big Book of Love. With 30 years experience in psychology, embodiment, manifesting, and energetics, we will be exploring together and with guests all things mindset, self-expression, and richer flow of money and love in your life. The keys to becoming rich, sexy, and free. So if this excites you, don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite platform so you can stay up to date with the podcast. Let's now dive into today's episode. Hi, Jo Warwick here, and welcome to episode 6 of Rich, Sexy, and Free. And if you're new to my world, I am so pleased that you're here. You can always get in contact with me at Rich, Sexy, and Free on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Today, we are diving inside the concept of value. Now, if you didn't know, I have just spent the last month traveling around the UK. I took the month off. So even if you've been listening to the podcast, actually, I have been traveling and surrendering pretty much for the whole of August. Why? Because this year for me has been about shedding any old limiting beliefs, energies, conditioning, and programming that are getting in the way of me stepping into the next level of my rich, sexy, and free life. I felt deeply called at the beginning of the year. I set an intention that this would be the best year of my life so far. I then plummeted into sickness and has been a bit of a roller coaster. And yet, in those moments has been absolute grace and ease and living everything that I teach, because that's what I do. I teach what I live, and I live what I teach. So in this last month, I have been recalibrating to a higher level of value through my body, and that has taken a process of surrender. And in the first part of that journey, I revisited and reclaimed all different parts of myself that I'd physically left around the UK. If you don't know, I left home at 17 and went off to train for the Olympics. So I trained as a professional 3-day event rider, and I moved around a lot, trained with lots of different people. I've lived in lots of different places already with my parents, and I went to boarding school. So I've moved a lot. So I've been reclaiming. And part of that journey helped me to see, particularly in the second half of this month, as I went up north and explored all the way up until Scotland. It gave me perspective to really see an old pattern I had been playing out so that I could step forward. And it always makes me laugh, because as much as we may know something, as much as we may teach something, as much as we may be so good with somebody else, it's always so funny that when we can't see that we are actually playing out something ourselves that is hindering. And which is why it is so important to have a good practice of self-awareness. A lot of the work that I do with my clients is about having that deep awareness with the universe, with source divine, God, however you want to call it, to be able to see, so that you're truly open and willing to be able to see what's in the way and release it fast and quickly. It's about having a practice, and it's also about being willing to be shown and be guided by life itself or through a coach, in ways of having tools of being able to say, where am I disowning my value and where am I owning it? And that's what it always comes down to. In the previous episode, I talked about that shift from powerless to I am powerful. And so there's going to be parts of yourself that say, I have value and I don't have value. But interestingly, in our society, one of the confusing factors that we can see around ourselves is that this idea that money equals value, that if something has more value, it's going to be more expensive. And yet there is so many offerings out there, not just on social media, but going to restaurants, clothing, things like that, where people have just put the price up for that psychological idea that it has better value when in fact the quality is poor. And it's one of the things I find deeply annoying is when you're met by poor service. Poor service, whether that's through a coach, poor service through a communication, poor service through a relationship, poor service going to a restaurant, etc. And what you get back is not in relation to your expectations, not in relation to the value that you deserve. And yet it can go the other way where we devalue ourselves, where we are undervaluing what we're putting out into our business, into our life, into relationships, where we are a big giver, a big lover, and we actually devalue what we're putting out. So there's this twisted idea that can happen with value. Is it about the value that you're giving, the value that you're receiving? Does it have anything to do with money? Yes, of course it does. If you don't have a good concept around value, your value, and what you expect to receive, then the value of money is going to be different in your eyes. And when you have more money, the value of money changes. When you have a different mindset about money, the value of money changes. But it's our job to line up so it feels so good to us, to feel rich, to feel sexy and free, to have the life that you want to live by aligning your sense of value, your sense of what feels good and right to you in what you're putting out and what you're receiving energetically, physically, using your energy, time, space, all of those things in relation to the pricing and the value of what you put out and what you get back. Let's be honest, in a healthy world, money should not come into a relationship, an intimate relationship, but it does. It does about this contract that goes on regarding who's got the money, how are we paying for things. At some levels, we can play out this funny, limited exchange between, what have you given me and what am I receiving? Well, do you remember that game when you were little of Pass the Parcel? It's just one parcel and it has to go around everybody until there's no kids left. And that's the unhealthy state of lack of value, because it's this idea that it's limited. I once heard about a really great example of where value had gone insane. They did a test to see how people would perceive if they invited them to a restaurant that only fed flowers. And what they did was paint a warehouse, put little test tubes around the walls with one single flower, and then fed all the press and all the celebrities who came just raw flowers. This is the new avant-garde next thing. And what happened was all these people were joining in, going, oh, yes, really like the Emperor's New Clothes, going, oh, yes, this is the next big thing. When in fact, when it was then revealed, it was just a social test to see what would happen. Because we can get swept away with other people's concepts of value, other people's concepts on social media, on fashion, in our society that don't sit well with us. And as I said, one of the things that really annoys me is going to a restaurant, the food isn't great, and yet they've whacked their prices up. And that is so wrong. In contrast to that, when we own our own value, we can allow things to not irritate us as much. We can demand a different set of value to come into our life. In one of my programs, Selling is Easy, I talk about the value model I have used going in consulting on 7-figure businesses, where enabling people to actually have this value for you, value for the client, value for the price, value for the product, that it all must be equal. And that is the foundation of a healthy relationship, whether in business, but or even an intimate one. There must be this fair exchange. There must be a fair exchange of energy and time and love. And then if money is part of that equation, then it should flow naturally. It's not that you are coming from a state of you give me this and therefore I have to give you the exact same amount. It's about the fact that you're going to become an abundant economy. Now, in my recent program, my Rich as Fuck program, it is about shifting to that abundant economy, that mindset of knowing that value and money, when you shift into an abundant economy, when you shift your mindset, when you shift your energy and your frequency, you can feel that the economy is in overflow all the time, so that you're not looking at a linear state, you're looking at a conversation between you and an economy that's happening everywhere in your life. that you're receiving in an overflow, and therefore you can hold value. And when that knocks on into your own business, you don't have to just sell high ticket or just sell low ticket. You can do everything because it feels good to you. And that has got to be the key of value. What feels good and right to you now may not also feel good and right to you later, but you can only work with what feels good and right to you now. So when I'm asked about clients about pricing, I always say, what feels good to you? What would feel like the right price for you to feel like you're being honored and seen and valued, and you're honoring and seeing the client? Then you can always put your prices up later as you get more and more confident about that. But it's got to feel good and right to you. So when we think about value, on the inside is the first place it has to start. To see value on the outside in your life, whether that's the service you're receiving, because I recognize that when I go to a restaurant and the service is crap, or when I go and buy a product and the service is crap, it has been in the past a reflection of me, of where I have been frustrated that I know I deliver an incredibly good value service, but I wasn't valuing myself properly. Now, there are times when it's like, no, you're just taking the piss. And I know that it's not like it's a deep program. It's just, that's not right for me. But I don't have to get angry with it. I can just leave. Or I can get a refund, or it doesn't trigger me in the same way. But I think those things really help us to see you have to put up and shut up with poor service. In a relationship, in a restaurant, in a shop, in products, you don't have to put up and shut up. I said, being English, that was definitely a program. But I have definitely learned from my American cousins to be a bit more, no, that's not acceptable. However, in the coaching field, in the online space, I am fully aware of poor service. They don't have the knowledge or the experience. They can't hold the space. So people have been let down, unfortunately. So for you to shift, what value do you have? And where are you coming from in your life experience, in your acceptance of yourself and acceptance of your own divine self, the value of who you already are. But the value that you put out into the world is so important to honor. Your energy is everything. Your contribution is everything. But if you don't value it, you won't see that value come back to you. Let me just say that again. If you don't value the energy that you put out, the time, the energy, the love that you're putting out into the world, you won't see the value of that coming back to you. You won't see it manifest in your life through your work, through your business, through your relationships, through your money. You won't see that because you're not valuing the exchange that you're giving out. So how can you do that better? Of course, you could buy the Big Book of Love. This would be a great place to start. bigbookoflove.com, my manual to all value, love, relationships, everything. Head over to richsexyandfree.com. I have got a brand new opportunity for you to access some tasters of the kind of work that I do with my clients' body, being rich, sexy, and free. I hope that you will continue to like and subscribe the podcast on whichever platform you're on. It's so beautiful to share these conversations and insights with you. And if you want to get in contact with me, always head over to Rich, Sexy and Free in Instagram, YouTube, or on Facebook. It's been great to connect with you today, but before you leave, if you want to find out more about how I can help you personally, or check out any of my books, products, or coaching packages, just simply go ahead and visit richsexyandfree.com. And I look forward to seeing you next week on the podcast.